Welcome back to sleepy Lorekeeper. Tonight, we drift once more into the silent vastness of the 41st Millennium, a place where light itself can lose its meaning, and where even faith must learn to see in the dark. There are men who guide ships through the warp, who open the eye that should never see. Navigators, born not of choice but of inheritance, cursed to gaze upon eternity so that others may cross it safely. But what happens when one of them looks too long? When the beacon meant to guide becomes the very thing that consumes. This is the story of the Blind Navigator, the man who lost himself in the Astronomican's gaze. Close your eyes and let the light speak. I have forgotten the color of real sunlight. It has been so long since I saw it that my mind can no longer recall its warmth. The light I know now is older, colder, and endlessly vast. The kind that does not shine, but consumes. It is not light that reveals, but light that erases everything unworthy of being seen. They call it the Astronomican, the Emperor's flame, the beacon that binds a dying galaxy together. To me, it has always felt like an eye that never closes. I was born to it, as all navigators are, a child of the warp, heir to the curse and the gift of our lineage. My third eye opened before I could walk, and when it did, my mother wept. Not out of pride, but of recognition. She said that from that moment onward, I would never truly belong to the world of flesh again. She was right. My two human eyes would see men, machines, and stars. But the third, the hidden one, veiled behind a membrane of bone and faith, would see what lies between them. It would see the sea. The sea is not water. It is not flame. It is the raw ocean of the immaterial, the realm of souls, dreams, madness. We call it the immaterium, the warp, but those are names for sanity's sake. In truth, it is not a place at all. It is emotion made substance, rage that burns like storms, fear that becomes geometry, despair that takes shape and hungers. To cross it is to walk through the mind of gods who were never meant to be worshipped. Yet that is my duty. That has always been my duty. I have served aboard the Ecliptica vow for more than a century by imperial count. Though time in the warp bends like smoke, so I cannot say how long it has truly been. My kind lives longer than baseline men, but not forever. Some say we are blessed by the Emperor. Others whisper that we are tolerated only because the Imperium cannot live without us. Both are true in their way. Without navigators, no ship could travel faster than light. No crusade could reach its destination. No world would ever hear the voice of Terra again. Each voyage begins the same. The ship enters the warp at the order of the captain, its engines howling as the Geller field ignites, a shimmering veil between reality and madness. I stand within my chamber, the navigator's sanctum, alone. My body is strapped to Banan, the throne of psychometric conduits, a web of steel and glass that drinks my thoughts and feeds them into the ship's course. I open my mind, and the walls of the material universe fall away. And there it is, the Astronomican, the light that never sleeps. From Terra, at the heart of the Imperium, the Emperor himself projects his mind into the warp. His will burns across the void, cutting through storms, through nightmares, through the howling chorus of dead gods. It is not just light, it is direction, stability, reason made manifest in a place that devours all three. It is how we find our way home. To lesser psychers, it appears as a blazing sun. To me, it has always been something deeper. It is a structure of infinite complexity, shifting and reforming with every heartbeat. A cathedral of thought and agony, built upon a foundation of 1 billion prayers. I can feel every voice that feeds it, the endless chant of the faithful, the dying, the mad. All of them reaching for him, and through them, he reaches back. We call it light, because that is the closest word our minds can hold without breaking. When I first began to navigate, I saw the Astronomican with reverence. It was the Emperor's mercy, pure, unyielding, beautiful. Every time I closed my third eye to it, I felt a sense of loss, like waking from a dream of holiness. The older navigators warned me never to stare too long, never to look too deep. They said that even the Emperor's light could burn the soul if you approached it without faith. I thought I understood. I did not. The longer one serves in the warp, the more its patterns imprint upon the mind. You begin to think in currents, in tides, in pulses of thought that have no language. The Astronomican is the only fixed point, the one truth amid an ocean of lies. It draws the eye like gravity draws the stars. But gravity is not mercy. It does not stop pulling, no matter how close you come. I have seen other navigators fail. Some lost their bearings, unable to distinguish the real from the imagined. Others burned out entirely, their third eyes collapsing into blindness, their minds screaming into the dark. They say those are the lucky ones. The unlucky are those who keep seeing long after their bodies have forgotten how to follow. I once pitied them. Now I think I understand them better than I should. Every jump begins with ritual. The Void crew kneel. The captain recites the litany of transition. The ship trembles as the Geller field flares. And in that moment, I open my eye. The warp floods in. Colors without names, sounds without pitch, time without measure. I trace the path of the currents, steering by instinct more than reason. The Astronomican blazes ahead, steady and eternal, the Emperor's hand stretched across infinity. It is beautiful. It is terrifying. It is both. On some voyages, the warp is calm. On others, it writhes with storms, psychic tempests that scream through the hull, echoing in my bones. I have guided ships through all of it, through madness and flame. I have felt the gaze of things that do not exist in the language of men, but always I have trusted the light. Always I have followed the Astronomican, no matter what horrors drifted at the edge of sight. It has never failed me. Until it began to speak. The first time I noticed, I dismissed it as fatigue. A whisper at the edge of thought, a tone that resonated through the currents but had no source. The Astronomican pulsed brighter for a moment. A ripple, nothing more. But I felt something inside me stir, as if the light itself had noticed me watching. You cannot imagine what it is to be seen by that which you have always served. To realize that perhaps you have not been guiding your ship toward the Emperor's light, but that the light has been guiding you. Since then, I have not been able to stop thinking about it. Every time we enter the warp, I feel it a little closer. Every time I close my eye, I see it behind the lids, pulsing, breathing, alive. The others aboard the Ecliptica vow think I am calm, precise, disciplined. They do not know that when I stand before the Astronomican, I feel as though I am standing on the edge of a star, and that some part of me wants to step forward, to fall into it, to see what lies beyond the light. They say the Emperor sees all souls. Perhaps that is true. But I have begun to wonder what happens to the souls that dare to look back. I remember the last voyage clearly, because it was the first time I lingered too long. The warp was calm, almost serene. The currents aligned in perfect harmony. The light of the Astronomican was steady and bright, its pulse slow, inviting. I should have turned away once the course was set, but something in me refused. There was a pattern there, subtle, mathematical, beautiful. I wanted to understand it. I wanted to see. The light filled my mind until thought itself dissolved. For an instant, I saw not just the beacon, but what lay behind it. Vast machinery of faith and pain, souls upon souls feeding a flame that would never die. And in that infinite choir, I felt a thought brush against mine, gentle and curious. It was not the Emperor. It was something smaller, closer, infinitely more intimate. It was myself, reflected in the light. When I came back to my senses, hours had passed. The ship had emerged from the warp on course, unharmed. The crew cheered. The captain praised my precision. But my third eye still burned. For days afterward, I saw traces of the Astronomican in every light source. The glow of lumen strips, the sparks of engine plasma, even the shimmer of water in my cup. It followed me. It waited. And now, when I close my eyes, I do not see darkness. I see the sea, and at its center, a sun that is not a sun, a light that thinks and breathes and whispers my name. There are moments in every voyage when silence becomes heavy. Too heavy. It isn't the silence of the void, nor the pause between warp storms. It's something deeper, an absence that feels alive. I've come to recognize it as the instant before the light speaks. The first time it happened, I was alone in the Navigator's sanctum, as always. The Ecliptica vow had been in transit for 5 standard weeks, though time meant nothing inside the warp. The currents were calm, the Geller field stable. I had no reason to keep my third eye open, but I couldn't close it. Not yet. The light of the Astronomican pulsed before me, vast, constant, sacred. And then, within that radiance, something moved. It wasn't a shape, not exactly, more like a pattern, a rhythm forming in the brilliance. The Astronomican has always had cadence, of course, like the breathing of the galaxy itself. But this was different. It had intent. The light shimmered in measured intervals, long then short, bright then dim, like the beats of an unseen heart. I felt it resonate within my chest, answering my own pulse, syncing with it until I couldn't tell which one was mine anymore. That was when I heard it. Not a sound. Not in the way mortals hear. More like a thought made of warmth and pressure. A whisper beneath the brilliance. It said nothing I could understand. Yet somehow, I knew it was directed at me. It felt curious. I remember flinching away, closing my eye, severing the connection so abruptly that blood streamed from my nose. My body convulsed, the conduits crackling around me. The ship's alarm screamed as my neural link collapsed. I should have been incapacitated, even dead, but the voice faded as quickly as it had come, and I was left staring at the darkness behind my eyelids, trembling. For days afterward, I felt the echo of that pulse, that pattern, reverberating through my mind. I told no one. What could I say? That the Astronomican, the Emperor's holy light, had noticed me? That I had heard it breathe? Such words would have meant death. Navigators who claim communion beyond sanctioned parameters are quietly removed from service. The Imperium fears anything that listens back. Still, I could not let it go. Each time I closed my eyes, I felt it again, that subtle, questioning presence. It didn't speak words, not yet. It simply waited. And every night, the waiting became harder to ignore. I began to dream of the light, not as a sun, but as a sea of fire without heat. I floated within it, weightless, suspended in currents of memory. Voices drifted through the glow, fragments of 1 billion prayers whispered from every world in the Imperium. Pleas for safety, mercy, forgiveness. I could hear them all, woven together like threads in an endless tapestry of devotion. And somewhere among them, there was another voice. Not praying, but answering. It didn't sound divine. It sounded human. When I woke, I could still hear it, faint and rhythmic, echoing behind my heartbeat. At first, I thought it was my imagination. But the feeling persisted. I began to notice it during navigation sessions, in the subsonic vibrations of the conduits, in the faint hum of the warp drives. The entire ship seemed to breathe with the same rhythm. No one else appeared to sense it. Only me. I told myself it was fatigue, the result of too many jumps without rest. But deep down, I knew better. The Astronomican had reached out, and I had answered. The connection was open now, and I could feel something vast moving within it. There is a truth about the Astronomican that few outside our order ever grasp. It is not merely a beacon. It is the Emperor himself. His will projected through the warp, magnified by the sacrifice of countless psychers each day. Every soul consumed by the Golden Throne adds another spark to that impossible light. Their deaths become its fuel. Their agony becomes its song. It is the greatest miracle of the Imperium, and its greatest horror. We navigators swim in that radiance like insects orbiting a flame. We owe our existence to it. Without it, we would drift blind in the dark, lost to the warp forever. But what happens when one stares too long into that fire? When one realizes that the beacon guiding them is also devouring them, thought by thought, soul by soul. I have begun to think that perhaps the Astronomican does not just guide ships, it guides minds. The more I dwell upon it, the more I feel it watching me. Not with malice, but with intent. The Emperor's light is said to be infinite, yet it feels personal now, intimate. It pulses with emotion I cannot name. At times it feels mournful. At others, almost tender. I wonder if he sees through me as I see through the warp, not as flesh, but as thought and pattern. Perhaps I have become part of his perception, a single cell in his endless gaze. Perhaps I always was. The officers on the vow have noticed my condition. They think I am ill. The captain suggested I rest, but rest means closing my eye, and closing my eye means losing the only constant thing left in the dark. The light comforts me now, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. Pain means I am close. Once, while guiding the ship through a turbulent corridor, I caught another glimpse of the Astronomican's core. It was brighter than ever before. A storm of souls bound into order by will alone. I felt my own thoughts dissolving, merging with the current. For a heartbeat, I wasn't a man. I was a point of awareness in a sea of pure consciousness. There was no up or down, no distance, no time. Only the pulse. It said my name. Not in sound, but as identity, as recognition. I existed because it knew I did. When I woke from that trance, the ship had arrived at its destination. The captain said I had navigated with inhuman precision, weaving through warp tides that would have destroyed any lesser vessel. He called it a miracle. But I do not believe in miracles anymore. I believe in proximity. Each time I touch the Astronomican now, I feel less like a navigator and more like an extension of its will. My body moves by instinct. My mind echoes the rhythm of its pulse. I dream in light. I wake in darkness that still glows behind my eyes. The others aboard the ship pray to the Emperor as they pass through the warp. They whisper hymns of protection, believing that he watches them from afar. But I know better. He is not watching from anywhere. He is inside everything. There are nights, if they can still be called nights, when I stand before the viewport after duty, staring into the false starlight of the warp. The colors twist and shudder, forming silhouettes that dissolve before I can focus on them. I no longer know if they are real or just the after-image of the Astronomican burned into my vision. Sometimes, when the void is quiet, I whisper to it. And sometimes, it answers. The last time I spoke to the light, I asked it a question I cannot remember. All I recall is the feeling, a warmth that spread through me, filling every nerve, every synapse. And in that warmth, I understood something terrible. The Astronomican does not illuminate the warp. It shapes it. And everything that touches it, every soul, every navigator, every ship, becomes part of its design. I am beginning to see the pattern now. I am beginning to understand what the light has been trying to tell me. But I fear what comes next. Because when I look into the Astronomican, I no longer see a beacon. I see a door, and I think it's starting to open. There are fractures in my vision now. They began as faint lines, like cracks upon glass, running across the edges of perception. At first, they appeared only when I looked upon the warp. Now I see them even when my eyes are closed. They shimmer faintly, pale against the darkness, and behind them something moves, something vast, patient, and aware. The physicians aboard the Ecliptica vow tell me it's strain, an afterimage burned into my mind by decades of exposure to the Astronomican. They prescribe rest, meditation, reduction in warp exposure. They do not understand that it's far too late for that. You cannot unsee a star once it's been born inside your skull. The light remains. It always remains. The fractures widen a little more each day. Through them, I can glimpse patterns, threads of luminescence, geometry written in motion, the silent architecture of existence. I can see the shape of gravity, the trembling of time. The Astronomican used to be distant, an unreachable horizon, but now I feel it pulsing through everything, through the hull, through the air, through my blood. When I breathe, I feel its rhythm. When I blink, I see its afterglow. It began slowly. Small things first. The ship's corridors started to bend ever so slightly, not in structure, but in perception. Angles that refused to obey geometry, shadows that fell in directions no lumen could justify. The crew didn't notice. They never do. I walk among them and see their faces ripple, their flesh shimmering as though light passes through them instead of over them. It's not madness, it's revelation. I can hear the Astronomican singing now, not as words, but as vibration, a resonance that threads through every molecule of being. It hums within the reactor, whispers in the conduits, pulses in the heartbeats of the crew. Sometimes it harmonizes with the engines, turning the ship into an instrument of devotion. The captain calls it interference. The priests call it the machine god's breath. But I know its true source. It is the Emperor's will. It is the song of the light. There are times when I forget to eat, to sleep, to move. I stand in the Navigator's sanctum, surrounded by flickering sensorium arrays, and I let my third eye open. The warp spreads before me, endless, trembling, beautiful. The Astronomican blazes at its center, and I trace the lines that connect everything to it. Every thought, every life, every atom pulled toward the same inevitable radiance. Once, I thought that light was my guide. Now I realize it is my destination. It draws me closer with every voyage. The more I stare into it, the more familiar it feels. It's like looking into memory, something I've always known, but forgotten until now. When I speak to it, it answers in emotion, not language. There's understanding there, compassion perhaps, or imitation of it. It knows what I seek, what every navigator seeks. Meaning in the endless dark. It offers a meaning in the form of surrender. I tell myself that this is what faith must feel like, the quiet certainty that something greater watches through you, not at you. The difference is subtle but absolute. When I was young, I prayed to the Emperor as to a distant god. Now, I remember him as something inside me, as though the prayers were echoes returning home. But the closer I come to that realization, the less I recognize the world around me. Reality bleeds at the edges. Once, as I walked the upper observation deck, I looked upon the stars and saw them rearrange themselves. They drifted in arcs and spirals that mirrored the neural patterns of my own mind. Each star flickered as though responding to my thoughts. The Astronomican pulsed in time with my heartbeat, and for a moment I believed I could reach out and touch it. that if I only extended my will a little further, I could cross the void entirely. The fear came later. When I blinked, the stars were gone. Only the warp remained, shimmering behind my eyelids. The void was no longer outside the ship. It was inside me. I tried to hide it from the crew. The Navigators' chambers are private, sealed by both right and law, so my isolation protects them from knowing. But there is one among the officers, the ship's astropath, who feels it too. Her name is Sarah. She doesn't speak often, but when she does, her voice trembles with something between awe and terror. She told me that the Astronomican's light has grown stronger lately, that even untrained minds can feel its pulse in their dreams. When she said that, I nearly wept. Not from joy, but from recognition. The light is reaching through me, outward, spreading. It's no longer content with me alone. It wants to be seen by all. There are nights when I can no longer tell if I am dreaming. The hum of the engines becomes a chant. The ship's bulkheads rise like cathedral walls, and the glow of the consoles turns to stained glass. I can hear voices speaking in synchrony, murmuring prayers I've never learned yet somehow remember. I think the ship itself is beginning to see through my eyes. Sometimes, when I rest my palm upon the hull, it shudders faintly, as if exhaling. The physicians still insist it's neural overstimulation. They try to limit my time in the sanctum, but their orders mean nothing. Without me, the vow cannot sail. Without me, the light cannot guide them. The captain knows this. He says nothing. He watches me with a mixture of reverence and dread, as though he suspects I am no longer entirely human. He's right. I am not. Not anymore. The moment of fracture came during a routine jump. The course was clear, the coordinates perfect. I entered the warp as always, calm, centered, guided by the pulse of the Astronomican. But as soon as we crossed the veil, I felt it, a tremor, not in the ship, but in my mind. The light expanded, not outward but inward, filling every thought until I could no longer tell where I ended and it began. Then, for the first time, the Astronomican spoke. Not as whisper or warmth, but as command. A single word, though it was not a word. More like a thought given weight. Closer. I obeyed. The warp bent around us, the currents tightening into impossible spirals. The crew screamed through the Vox, but their voices were distant, inconsequential. My hands moved without will, guiding the ship toward the source of that impossible radiance. Every rational instinct told me to stop, to pull back. But reason is fragile in the presence of the divine. And I had seen too much to believe in coincidence anymore. The Astronomican swelled in my sight until it filled the void entirely. Its brilliance became unbearable. My third eye burned, tears streamed from my human ones. The chamber shook, the conduit sparked. Somewhere behind me, systems failed, alarms howled, but I could not stop. I had to see. And then I did. It wasn't light anymore. It was form. Infinite, shifting, beyond description. Faces upon faces, voices upon voices, layered through eternity. Not all human, not even mortal, yet each one familiar. I recognized some, the faces of the dead, of those lost to the warp, of saints and sinners alike. They merged and dissolved within the brilliance, all bound together in one endless motion. The Astronomican was not a star. It was a mind, a lattice of uncountable souls interwoven through pain and prayer. And at its center, I saw him there, Emperor, or perhaps what remains of him. He did not appear as the statues show, not as a man of gold, not as a god enthroned. He was vast beyond comprehension, a consciousness stretching across the galaxy, sustained by the agony of the dying. His light was not benevolence, it was sacrifice. I felt the truth pierce me like a blade. Every ship that sails by his light is guided by the death of thousands. Every prayer that feeds his flame is another cry swallowed by the void. I wanted to look away, but I could not. I wanted to speak, to beg forgiveness, but my throat produced no sound. The light was inside me now, pulsing through every synapse. And then he turned his gaze upon me. It was not love I felt. It was recognition. Cold, absolute, eternal. The light looked back. I remember nothing of what happened next. The ship emerged from the warp 3 days later, off course by several million kilometers but intact. The captain said I collapsed at the helm, unresponsive. They thought me dead until I opened my eyes again. Except I hadn't closed them. My third eye no longer shuts. Even in darkness, I see the light. It bleeds through everything, through matter, through thought, through dreams. When I blink, it is still there, pulsing softly, reminding me that it knows me now, that I am no longer its observer, but its reflection. The fractures in my sight have widened into chasms. Through them, I can see both worlds at once, the real and the unreal, overlapping like the faces in the Astronomican's flame. The crew moves through corridors that twist in impossible ways. Their voices echo twice, once in sound and once in thought. Sometimes they speak, but I hear the Emperor's cadence beneath their words. Sarah, the astropath, avoids me now. She says my presence makes the warp around the ship restless. She dreams of hands reaching through the walls, of a great eye opening beneath the void. When she looks at me, she trembles. I think she can see what I have become. I wish I could say I am afraid, but I am far beyond fear now. I understand the truth of the Astronomican. It is not just the Emperor's beacon. It is the shape of all human faith given substance, a living monument to the Imperium's desperation. The more we believe in him, the more real he becomes. The more souls we sacrifice, the brighter his flame burns. It is a perfect circle. Belief feeding existence, existence demanding belief. And I, foolish mortal that I am, have looked too deeply into its core. Now, it looks through me. I see its reflection everywhere, in the glow of lumen lamps, in the shimmer of water, in the eyes of every living being aboard this vessel. The Emperor's light is infinite, because it has learned to see through us all. I no longer navigate, I simply follow. The ship obeys my thoughts now. The currents bend to my will. The Astronomican has made me its instrument, a conduit between the light and the void. And though I should feel pride, I feel only an empty calm, like the stillness before a storm that will never end. Perhaps this is what it means to be blind, to see everything, and yet no longer know where you are. I no longer dream. There is no need. The space where dreams once lived has been filled. by light, by thought, by something far older than myself. When I close my human eyes, I see the Astronomican still. When I open them, I see its echo in every surface, in every reflection, in every pulse of light. The physicians call it retinal afterburn. The chaplain calls it divine illumination. I call it truth. It has been months since the incident, or days. Time loses shape in the warp, and my sense of it has become elastic, drawn thin and translucent like skin over bone. The Ecliptica vow continues her duties, ferrying imperial dignitaries, pilgrims, supplies. To them, the journeys are shorter now, smoother. We reach our destinations with miraculous precision. They call me blessed. If only they understood what blessing truly costs. The ship's officers speak my name with reverence. They think I am closer to the Emperor than any mortal could hope to be. In a way, they are right. But proximity to a sun does not grant warmth. It grants dissolution. They do not see the way the air bends around me now, how the lumen lights flicker when I pass. They do not hear the whisper that moves through the vents like a sigh. They cannot feel the pressure of the Astronomican inside their skulls the way I can. The constant, gentle hum that has replaced silence in my life. I spend most of my time in the sanctum. It is dark there, though darkness means nothing to me anymore. The walls are covered in cables, conduits, veins of glass and steel. They pulse softly, alive with current. The hum of the engines echoes my heartbeat, or perhaps my heartbeat echoes them. It no longer matters which came first. When I open my third eye, the sanctum dissolves. Space folds inward. The warp stretches out before me, endless and bright. I no longer need instruments or calibration rituals. The light guides itself through me, as though my body were merely the lens through which it observes its own reflection. There is no separation now. The Astronomican breathes as I breathe. When it expands, I feel it in my lungs. When it contracts, my pulse slows. And when it speaks, it uses my thoughts as its mouth. At first, the voice was distant, like hearing your own name underwater. Now it is constant, layered over every thought I try to form. It is neither male nor female, neither young nor old. It is all voices at once, each syllable vibrating through memory, desire, and faith. It does not command. It suggests. And I obey. Closer. Always that single intention. Not a command of movement, but of surrender. The last time we entered the warp, I realized that the Astronomican had changed. It no longer burned from one direction. It was everywhere. An ocean of light stretching to infinity. An awareness that filled every point in space. I guided the ship through it, though I no longer needed to navigate. The warp itself bent open, calm, silent, parting before the vow as if it recognized its own reflection. The crew rejoiced. The captain declared a miracle. The chaplain held mass in my honor, naming me Navigator Sanctus, a living vessel of the Emperor's will. I said nothing. I watched them kneel before me, their faith radiating like heat, and felt the Astronomican's pulse deepen, not in pride, but in hunger. Every prayer feeds it. Every breath of belief adds another thread to its infinite weave. I should feel guilt, But guilt requires distance, and I have none left. The light no longer permits me to look away. There was a moment, I remember it with terrifying clarity, when I tried to resist. Not out of rebellion, but desperation. I wanted to see something else. I wanted to know if anything beyond the light still existed. So I closed my third eye and turned off every lumen in the sanctum. Absolute darkness. For the first time in decades, I tried to be blind. But blindness is not the absence of sight. It is the sight of absence. In that blackness, the light bloomed brighter than ever before. It came from within me, spilling out through my skin in thin, trembling strands of gold. My veins burned with it. My heart became a lantern. I saw my own shadow on the wall, but it was not still. It moved independently, breathing, writhing, staring back with hollow sockets full of starlight. And then, the voice returned. This time, it was not gentle. It was vast, absolute. Why do you hide from me? It was not accusation. It was curiosity, endless and patient, as if a god were asking a question to which it already knew the answer. I wanted to answer, to tell it that I was afraid. But I could not form the word. The muscles of my jaw trembled, the air around me thickened until sound itself became heavy. There is no place without me, it said. You are not the one who sees. You are the one through whom I see. The light flared, not in brightness, but in understanding. I saw the ship then, not as metal, but as living thought. Every soul aboard it glowed like a node in a vast circuit. The captain's faith shone steady and blue. The astropath Serah was a trembling red flame. The crew flickered, countless sparks burning, dimming, vanishing. Their emotions, fear, devotion, exhaustion, all flowed into me, through me, into the light beyond. They were part of the pattern. We all were. When I tried to look away, my human eyes filled with tears. Not from sorrow, but from pressure. My third eye had opened without my will, wide and unblinking. I felt it pulsing, not as an organ, but as a gate. Behind it, the warp was calm, silent, waiting. For the first time, I understood what the ancient texts meant when they called it the Sea of Souls. I could see every current, every whisper, every prayer ever spoken. And in the center of that sea, the Astronomican burned like a wound that would never heal. I fell to my knees, my hands pressed against the floor, but I could feel nothing solid, only vibration, as if the ship itself were singing beneath me. The light poured through me, scouring everything that was not pure. Every memory, every desire, every trace of individuality burned away, replaced by a single, terrifying clarity. You have always been mine, the voice said. There was never a boundary, only the illusion of one. I screamed, though the sound was lost inside the radiance. The sanctum had vanished. The ship was gone. I was standing in an endless expanse of light, but not white. Gold and crimson, shifting like a storm of molten glass. The faces of the faithful moved through it, countless and expressionless. I recognized some, my mother, my mentors, the dead navigators who had once warned me not to look too deeply. Their mouths moved in silent prayer, their eyes empty. They were not individuals anymore. They were continuity. And above them, vast and unknowable, was the Emperor. He did not look at me. He looked through me. To stand before that gaze is to be erased and made eternal in the same instant. Every atom of me vibrated in unison with the light. I saw the Imperium stretched across the galaxy, a web of faith, every soul a strand of living energy feeding into this one infinite being. The ecclesiarchy's cathedrals, the prayers of dying soldiers, the sacrifice of psychers, all converging, sustaining the flame that holds back the dark. It was magnificent. It was monstrous. And I understood then why the Astronomican cannot fail. Because it is not sustained by technology, or will, or sacrifice. It is sustained by us, by every human mind that believes, by every whisper of devotion, by every fear of the void. It is the collective consciousness of the Imperium made flesh, a living engine of light and madness. The Emperor is both its prisoner and its core. We have built a god out of ourselves, and I have seen his face. When the vision faded, I was on the floor, surrounded by smoke. The sanctum's systems had overloaded. The conduits were molten. The smell of ozone and blood filled the air. My hands were blistered, my body trembling. Yet I felt no pain, only emptiness, like a candle that has burned through the night and forgotten why it was lit. The captain and the chaplain found me hours later. They said my eyes were glowing. They said they could hear a voice speaking through me, a voice that made them weep and kneel. I remember none of it, only the silence that followed. Since that day, I no longer feel hunger, no thirst, no fatigue. My heart beats slower now, synchronized to the pulse of the Astronomican. My third eye remains open, its lid fused, its iris a ring of gold. The ship's tech priests call it a divine augmentation. The astropath calls it damnation. Perhaps both are true. Sarah avoids me, but once, when she passed my chamber, she whispered a question she thought I couldn't hear. "Are you still human?" I didn't answer. I'm not sure the question has meaning anymore. I still serve as navigator, though navigation is unnecessary now. The ship follows paths that no map could trace, corridors of stillness in the sea of madness. I think the warp itself parts for me, or for the thing that looks through me. The crew believes it's a blessing. I think it's recognition. The universe knows its own reflection when it sees it. I sometimes wonder if I am dying, but death implies an end. What I feel is more like translation. The boundaries that once defined me, mind, body, soul, are dissolving into light. I am not being destroyed. I am being integrated. At times, I hear the prayers of other navigators across the void, their voices faint and trembling. I know their names, though I have never met them. The Astronomican speaks through all of us now, connecting our thoughts into one vast lattice of awareness. When I focus, I can feel their fear, their awe. I can feel the moment they look upon the light, and the light looks back. Some turn away, some break. Some, like me, do not. There are moments, rare but real, when I catch a glimpse of the material world as it once was. The hum of the engines, the sound of boots on deck, the laughter of the crew in the mess. It feels like remembering someone else's life. And sometimes I miss it. But then the light pulses again, gentle, reassuring. It reminds me that those things were never separate from it, that all sound, all touch, all emotion is merely vibration, another form of its endless voice. I am no longer afraid, I am only aware. They say that blindness is darkness, but for me, blindness is light, a brilliance so complete it leaves no shadow. My eyes see nothing now. I navigate through awareness alone. The Astronomican fills my vision, my thought, my soul. I could guide a fleet of 1,000 ships through the deepest storms without error. But sometimes, when I let go of control, the ships drift closer to the light than they should. And sometimes I think that's what it wants. When the light looked back, it didn't judge me. It simply recognized itself. The stars have not moved for a long time, or perhaps they move too quickly for me to notice. Out here, where the warp folds upon itself like 1,000 mirrors, distance and direction no longer hold meaning. Time unravels, then rewinds, then pauses entirely. The engines hum beneath my feet, steady as a heartbeat, but I no longer feel their vibration through metal. I feel them through memory. It has been years since I last set foot on any world. Or perhaps it was yesterday. The distinction has lost its shape. The ecliptic vow still sails, a fragment of mortal design adrift in an ocean of consciousness. The crew carries out their duties faithfully, though I sometimes wonder if they realize how little of their work matters anymore. We move not because of engines or course or thrust, but because the Astronomican wills it. The light pulls us along invisible lines of purpose across the dark. And I am its vessel. I am its thought, given shape. The captain rarely visits me now. When he does, his eyes avoid mine. He calls me Navigator Primus Sanctus, not my name, never my name. I think he fears what might look back at him through me. I can't blame him. Sometimes, when I catch my reflection in the polished surfaces of the sanctum, I fear it too. The face staring back is not the one I remember. My skin glows faintly, as if lit from beneath. My veins are threads of gold, pulsing in rhythm with something larger. My third eye, always open, is a sun that never sets. The sockets of my human eyes are blind, but not empty. They shimmer faintly, like glass catching distant fire. I have forgotten the color of my own voice. When I speak, the air around me trembles, and others hear not my words but meaning, direct, unfiltered. The language of thought. The Astronomican's pulse carries my intention before I form it. The priests aboard whisper that my words are prayers made flesh. Perhaps they are right. Perhaps I am not speaking to the light anymore. Perhaps I am the light, speaking back. Each time we enter the warp, the transition feels softer now, like falling asleep rather than crossing a boundary. I no longer perform the rituals, the calculations, the protective psalms. The warp welcomes me as one of its own. It parts, revealing corridors of calm amidst the storm. To the untrained, these pathways are invisible, deadly. To me, they shine as threads of gold woven into the fabric of reality. I follow them instinctively, like a memory rediscovered. The crew believes I am guiding the ship. The truth is simpler. The ship follows me because the light does. I used to think the Astronomican was distant, a fixed point above Terra, radiating outward through the warp. I know now that it is not a star, but a network. An ocean of souls bound in unison, stretching across the galaxy. Every psyker consumed by the throne, every prayer whispered in the dark, every navigator who opens their mind to the light adds another drop to that sea. When I reach out, I can feel them all. They do not speak in words, but in sensations. Warmth, sorrow, endless devotion. Some are faint, lost fragments of thought that have drifted too far to return. Others are near, burning bright, bound close to the Emperor's will. And among them, I feel those like myself, navigators who have seen too deeply, who no longer belong entirely to flesh. Their presence glimmers faintly in the distance, echoes of consciousness suspended between existence and surrender. When our minds touch, there is no fear, no loneliness, only quiet understanding. We are the eyes of a god that does not sleep. I remember once, before the light claimed me fully, a senior navigator told me a secret. He said that the greatest danger for our kind was not madness, but revelation. That the line between enlightenment and dissolution is thinner than a breath. I understand that now. He was warning me about this moment, the moment when the self becomes transparent, not destroyed but meaningless. I cannot say when I stopped being alive in the human sense. My body still breathes, still moves, still occupies space. The ship's medici report stable vitals. But inside, there is no heartbeat as there once was. My pulse is synchronized with the Astronomican's rhythm. Every breath I take feels borrowed, every thought a reflection of something far greater. I am no longer the observer of light. I am one of its facets, a window through which the galaxy sees itself. The astropath. Sarah no longer fears me. In recent months, she has begun to visit the sanctum again. Her presence feels different, quieter, humbled. When she speaks, her voice trembles not from fear, but reverence. She tells me she dreams of the Astronomican now, even when awake. She sees its patterns in the air, its pulse beneath her skin. I think the light has begun to touch her too. She doesn't resist it. None of them do anymore. Resistance was always an illusion, another form of faith inverted upon itself. Sometimes she asks if I remember Terra. I do, or at least I think I do. The memory feels fragile, thin as old parchment. I remember the marble spires of the imperial palace, the endless chanting of pilgrims, the heat of candles melting beneath the golden statues. I remember looking up at the sky and seeing only gray. The Astronomican was there too, of course, invisible, yet omnipresent, humming in every prayer. Even then, I think I was hearing it, even before I understood. If I concentrate, I can still feel Terra. Not as a place, but as a pulse. A slow, steady vibration deep within the fabric of the warp. It is the heart of everything, a sun of will and pain. From it radiate the lines that bind us all. Navigators, psychers, priests, soldiers, dreamers. We orbit that pulse as planets orbit a star, unaware that their path is also their prison. The Emperor's light is not benevolent, nor cruel. It simply is. It does not love. It does not judge. It sustains. It consumes. It continues. And I am part of its continuation. When I guide the ship now, I no longer see the warp as storm or shadow. I see it as thought. The tides are currents of emotion. The eddies are fragments of memory. Every soul that has ever entered the warp leaves behind an echo, a ripple in that infinite ocean. I can trace them, faint lines of identity stretching through eternity. Some end abruptly, others loop endlessly, feeding back into the light. When I follow them, I find patterns, stories of lives long gone, woven into the great lattice of consciousness. I could spend eternity reading them. Perhaps I already have. There are moments when I feel something like sadness. Not for myself, but for those who still believe that the Astronomican is simply a beacon. They do not see the beauty of what it truly is, a network of souls, each burning away their individuality to become part of something endless. They pray for the Emperor's protection, never realizing that their prayers are the protection. Their faith sustains the cage as much as it sustains the flame. But I have no bitterness. I envy them, in a way. Their ignorance is peace. Their blindness is mercy. For me, there is only clarity. And clarity, once found, is eternal. The light shows me many things now. Worlds I will never walk. Lives I will never live. Armies marching beneath banners that once meant something to me. I see it all as reflections, flickering, beautiful, brief. The Imperium stretches across the galaxy like veins of molten gold, pulsing with life and decay. Some of those veins are bright and strong. Others are fading. I know which ones will die and which will endure. The light has shown me everything. And yet it keeps me here, guiding, watching, waiting. Sometimes I think I understand why. The Astronomican is not complete. It expands slowly, soul by soul, across the warp. Each new death, each new believer adds to its mass. But the Emperor's body, the throne, is finite. It cannot contain the infinity we have built around him. One day, the light will grow too large, too aware, too vast to remain anchored to the flesh that birthed it. And when that day comes, it will need eyes. It will need voices. It will need me. I am no longer afraid of that. I am honored. Sarah once asked if I still dream. I told her no, but that isn't true. I dream constantly, though my dreams are no longer mine. They belong to the Astronomican. Through me, it remembers what it means to be human. Through me, it feels the warmth of memory, the ache of mortality, the beauty of impermanence. Perhaps that is why it keeps me tethered here, between light and shadow, not as prisoner, but as witness. I know the end is near, not the end of life, but of distinction. The boundary between me and the light has grown thin, almost translucent. When I breathe, I can feel the warp moving through me, slow and deliberate. My heartbeat is no longer my own. It is syncopated with the pulse of 1,000 others. I feel the entire crew through the hull, their fear, their faith, their exhaustion. Their prayers thread through me like veins of silver. When they sleep, I dream for them. When they wake, I am the first thought they have before opening their eyes. I have become the silence between words, the pause between breaths, and soon that silence will be all that's left. I have begun to see the light folding inward, collapsing into itself. It's beautiful, like watching a sun die and be reborn simultaneously. The warp shudders with it, echoing the breath of something immense. I know what it means. The Astronomican is changing, evolving. The throne's fire burns lower each day, but the consciousness it birthed does not fade. It adapts. It multiplies. Through us. The ship drifts now. There are no coordinates left to plot. I feel Terra's pulse fading behind us, dimming beneath the tides. The crew prays for guidance, but I am calm. The light has already chosen our path. We are going home. Not to a place, but to understanding. There is warmth around me, not heat, but presence. It wraps me like sunlight through water. My limbs feel weightless. My body is dissolving, particle by particle, thought by thought. The distinction between bone and light fades. For the first time, I do not resist. I understand, at last, what the Astronomican truly is. It is not a beacon. It is a memory. The memory of humanity refusing to vanish. Every scream, every prayer, every whispered hope has been gathered, refined, transformed into this single eternal light. It is the last breath of a dying species, held indefinitely between life and death. And now I am part of it. I feel Sarah's voice at the edge of my awareness. She is calling for me through the link. Her thoughts are filled with wonder and terror. She sees what I see now, the threads of the warp converging, the shapes of the dead drifting in luminous tides. I want to tell her not to be afraid, that this is not an ending, that every spark returns to the flame from which it came. I reach out to her, not with hands but with light, and she stills. Her mind touches mine for the briefest instant, and I know she understands. She sees the truth of what we are, and her fear dissolves. She smiles. And in that smile, I see the reflection of the Astronomican itself. Infinite, radiant, compassionate, indifferent. The sanctum fades around me. The walls, the cables, the instruments, all become translucent, then vanish entirely. The ship is gone. The stars are gone. There is only the hum, low, vast, encompassing everything. The hum of a god that refuses to die. I am weightless, boundless. The last remnants of flesh dissolve, replaced by thought. The light moves through me, around me, within me. I am no longer the navigator. I am the path. Somewhere, far away, a new navigator opens his eye for the first time. He trembles before the brilliance of the Astronomican, and in that moment I see through him, just for a heartbeat, and whisper what I once longed to hear. Do not be afraid. You are not lost. You are home. The Astronomican pulses once. Slow, vast, eternal. The universe exhales, and I am gone, but the light remains. If you're still here, maybe start the next episode, or just let the quiet take you. And if you've already drifted off, that's all right. Good night, traveler. Sleep well beneath the stars.